The battle is not given to the swift, but to the one who endures. Abraham's journey in Genesis is a master class from learning how to go from Abraham the doubter to Abraham the father of faith. And this lesson that he went through was 12 particular lessons. It's like a 12-step program, right? And for those that are familiar with the number 12, you already know what I am talking about. This is a very symbolic number. The number 12 itself is born from the union of three, which three means spiritual completeness, and four, earthly foundation. So it inherently signifies the distance between spiritual and the material realms, embodying a state of balance and holistic existence. Just as Jesus journeyed with his 12 disciples, encompassing 12 constellations, Abraham navigated 12 trials as well, each step as he ascended within his state to his personal Jerusalem. The number 12 inherently implies structure and organization, providing a foundational framework for growth and understanding. The 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples of Jesus, exemplify this principle within the respective traditions. It represents creative manifestation within a completed cycle. In Kemetic cosmology, the soul's passage through the 12 gates or chambers of the Duat is a critical journey of trials and transformations essential for reaching the afterlife, facing judgment. These stages mirror the nature of our human experience. It's a cyclical nature, like the 12 hours of a day, making from the transformative journey from day into night, the challenges that we face with the promise of rebirth at the end, because we riding at dawn. So I want to get into what these 12 spiritual lessons are really quickly so that we can all win the war. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at lesson number 1. God's call requires us to have full obedience, full surrender. You can't bring other people with you along the way. Like it's a solo journey of isolation. It's not a conference call. There's no half stepping in the journey. So just know that when God calls you, God is specifically calling you and asking you to do something. It's not for you to bring anybody else along. And Abraham learned this when he tried to bring his father and his family and everybody else along with him on his spiritual journey. The second is learning how to just not operate in fear. You know what I'm saying? Like he knew that he had a calling on his life, like oftentimes we all do. We know that we have a calling on our life, but we operate in fear. We operate in lying and in authentic pursuits of our own material gain, and that itself puts us in bondage. It puts our soul in bondage. Those that are those frequencies are the lowest and the worst frequencies, literally a living hell. So you end up becoming trapped in a loop when you are focusing so much on the physical. Like imagine like binding your hands together, right? And so in order to bind your hands together, a loop would have to be created. And so within this process, operating out of fear, Abraham ended up pimping out his wife, Sarah. So the masculine was disobedient to his actual divine feminine and masculine self, because the story of Abraham is about the divine masculine and feminine aspects of our mind. So when our divine masculine is not in balance, when it's not being the protector, the provider that it needs to be, it sacrifices its feminine aspect, its emotion, for the comfort of gaining physical gain and material wealth. The third lesson that he went through was through the Lot dilemma. He had to make choices for spiritual gain versus material. And there's definitely a difference between the two. One frees you and one keeps you in bondage. And during this time, he also had to learn what generosity was, learning how to let go and choose a land that may appeared or seemed to be a rocky situation, but it precedes divine reaffirmation, releasing the need to control the outcomes and allowing space for others, understanding that there's no crabs in the barrel mentality, that abundance is available to everyone and you cannot operate in fear. Even when God blesses you, you still have to have an open heart. And there was a test in this situation as well, where Abraham passed the test, but the other part of him, the juvenile side, which was Lot, he ended up his greed led to Sodom's corruption. And this illustrates how choices driven purely off of self-interest and prioritizing the material over spiritual principles can lead you into challenges because karma always comes back to you. This is the law of cause and effect. So when you put out good causes, you get good effects. So within the other lesson that he learned was the rescue, right? This was when he acknowledged God's sovereignty, Abraham's acceptance of Melchizedek's blessings and giving a tithe. And the tithe is actually symbolizing that Abraham gave a tenth of everything to his temple of his mind. So he acknowledged God in everything that he did. It signifies his recognition of the ultimate authority and his gratitude for divine favor and his victory. This is an act of making sure that you always honor God first. And Melchizedek anointed him. This lesson here is letting you know that only a king can anoint you. Only a king can anoint a king. Not the world, not how many followers you have. When you honor God over material wealth, you recognize that all in the material that is without you, all in the material world without, first comes from within, that divine source that you have within you first. It's understanding the true law and the principle of cause and effect. It's principle over profit. He prioritizes his relationship with God and acknowledging that God is his true source of blessing and provisions, and they come from God alone. He doesn't want anyone, especially the king of Sodom, to claim credit for his prosperity. So the lesson here is letting you know that only God can get the glory of what God is trying to bless you with. The other test, where he ended up having to literally wait 13 more years for Isaac after Ishmael's birth. This lesson right here is letting you know that there is a period of preparation in your process of growth. The only way that you're going to win the spiritual war is if you allow this period of preparation of gestation to happen. If you allow yourself to become matured in the process so that you can actually receive God's blessings. Hold the vision and trust the process, despite it appearing whatever it is in the physical. It doesn't matter. God is still refining you regardless. Next lesson. The Hagar mistake, it really shows the importance of patience, trust, and waiting on God's timing. And when we get in the way of divine, when we operate out of the need to manipulate and control the how it's going to happen, how it's going to come about, when we're operating in our own self-imposed timelines and clock, when God already said God was going to bless you, but then you somehow think that you're greater than divine time. God is letting us know, like, hey, I made a contract, a commitment with you. And so when you, as a human, within your 3D, within the free will that you have, your ability to choose, when you decide to intervene in divine plans, your human understanding, first of all, is extremely limited. And we don't know the hour, the day, or the minute of how God moves and operates. We don't even know if God moves counterclockwise or clockwise. We don't even know how God spins. You know what I'm saying? And somehow we think that we can intervene in God's plans. And when we do, it doesn't always work out for us well. It sets us back, delay us from our purpose and the blessings that the Creator has for us. And so if you want to win, you don't want to be delayed. You don't want everybody to already have gotten to the finish line and you still lagging. So the next lesson here is you actually have to circumcise. You have to cut the dead weight out of your life. The things that circumvent you, you have to circumcise to release to the flesh to in order to make way for spirit. This symbolizes the necessity and the necessary severing of our reliance on physical senses, all of our egoic desires and limitations of our fleshly, materialistic, ego-driven consciousness where we have skepticism and disbelief and doubt and worry. So this represents that within this spiritual war and within this journey, you literally got to cut all that out. You cannot even worry for a little bit because it will tamper and delay your process. So, circumcising himself within this story, within this allegory, represents a commitment to a higher, more spiritual way of being. This cutting away creates space for the divine to more fully manifest within the individual. God's command for circumcision signifies an imperative need for humanity to transcend its lower nature. It's an invitation to become more identified beyond the physical and with not to identify with the physical, to beyond that, to identify not with the ego, right? To identify and allow ourselves to be led within divine will and to allow God to become our guiding force, to allow ourselves to commit. So it's a true commitment and it's an act of moving beyond the ego. It really is. It's a willingness to die to the ego. Imagine being like tethered to two wires and one wire is connecting you to your old world and one wire is connecting you to your new world. And that old world is your old way of thinking, your old patterns, your beliefs, your habits that you have, and your behaviors. And this new world is a new world of thinking. It's a new experience. It actually frees you from all of that worry and doubt. And so imagine yourself cutting that string of the old world and letting the divine guide you into this unfamiliar new land, into this unfamiliar consciousness, because it is absolutely better than where you're currently at. And God is way more powerful than what you have already created and established in your old world. Next lesson. In this intercession, within the fire and brimstone of this part of the allegory, is letting us know that the law of cause and effect will always intercede. The law cannot be broken. When you put out good causes, you get good effects. If you put out bad causes, you get bad effects. So you got to make sure that you check your intentions and leave your ego at the door. If you have internal discord within, you will have discord without, because evil always destroys itself. The brimstone and the fire in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and Satanism is very similar to hedonism, where there is pleasure in suffering, because people project their own pain onto others and they enjoy seeing it play out externally. They get pleasure over others' distress. I know you've encountered people like that before. Then there's always the dehumanization that comes into play when someone operates like this. They see others as objects. They don't even feel empathy for people. Like some of those people that be like, I care more about dogs than I do humans. Like, like they love animals more than humans. If they see a stray dog across the street, they get all upset, get out of their car in the middle of traffic to try to save the dog, but let a black teenager try to cross the street with a bottle of tea and they get all defensive and want to Zimmerman him down. So it's a us versus them mentality. Survival of the fittest really doesn't belong in community because there's only self-interest, which becomes egoic and corrupt. When you lose morale and the willingness to win at all costs, it causes you to reject higher principles, to reject living by code, which all result to a lack of empathy, which results to cruelty and indifference to others' suffering. And this ends up showing up in society and in self as fragmentation. And it can show up as materialism and greed, an excessive focus on wealth and accumulation and physical possessions, leading to exploitation and the disregard for others. Egotism and narcissism. It's an inflated sense of self-importance and a lack of empathy resulting in cruelty and indifference to suffering. Spiritual apathy, a rejection of other higher principles and a denial of the sacred. And it's a descent into hedonism and self-indulgence. And this goes beyond the sexual behavior that is typically associated with it. It's a disregard for the interconnectedness of all things, where humans have lost their sense of humanity in this particular situation. And I know some of y'all can relate because many of us are experiencing that right now. So you better believe there's definitely a divine intercession that is coming soon and very soon. It's already here, actually, truth be told. The next lesson here is understanding that we, as co-creators with the creator, we can play a role in the divine plan. And it's so necessary for alchemy to occur. And this is the blackening stage where you break down things in order for base metal to turn into gold. And that requires a lot of heat and fire. Next lesson is that old patterns will resurface until they are fully purged. All things rise and fall. This is what the law of rhythm tells us, that everything, cycles always repeat themselves. Everything in nature has a rhythm. You will continue to have to face your problems. They will continue to resurface until they are resolved. Deep-rooted tendencies within the subconscious mind will continue to manifest until they are consciously recognized, confronted, and ultimately transcended through doing the inner work and allowing God to develop you spiritually and having that spiritual growth. This really highlights divine's grace and our divine plan because it continues even when we stumble on our path, even when we fuck up, even when we do wrong, even when we make mistakes. God is letting us know that you might be able to delay your process by keep repeating the lessons, but you're going to be allowed to keep taking the test until you pass. This is why I say you cannot run from you. You will eventually catch up to you in this lifetime or the next. You are never derailed from the path or God's plan for you, or even denied. The door is open as soon as you pass through. To learn the lesson and then demonstrate the applied knowledge during the test. And those tests are a series of life situations and circumstances. The fact that this old pattern resurfaces indicates that the journey on spiritual evolution is not linear at all. Like God working within the individual's consciousness allows these patterns to resurface like the law of rhythm and be brought back into light until it is healed. We're going to continue to repeat those old cycles. And what are those old cycles? Some of us, that may be attracting a certain type of emotionally unavailable energy until you learn how to choose differently. Notice I said you choose, as in you do it. It's you that is attracting them. and choosing to interact and entertain them, knowing deep down inside, you done got that red flag, your spider senses done went off. You are the cause and the effect of all that you see and experience in your reality. What you don't allow or entertain does not become your reality. So when you have truly reached that spiritual growth, then you will recognize that old patterns won't start to resurface in the way that they do anymore. And if they do, then you know what the answer is and you know how to handle that situation. The next lesson, when Isaac is born, is letting us know that God's timing turns doubt into joy, which is what Isaac means, is that he laughs. And it can happen in a moment, in an instant. The birth of Isaac after decades of waiting and Abraham's initial laughter of disbelief, it symbolizes the transformative and alchemy power of divine timing. What seems impossible for a limited human perspective becomes a source of profound joy and fulfillment when aligned with the divine will. The name Isaac itself embodies the shift from doubt to a joyful realization. The long wait was not punishment, but a period of inner preparation and development, which led to the eventual manifestation of the miraculous when the conditions were divinely aligned. Abraham was not allowing his environment to be conducive for his growth. All things bloom in divine time. Waiting 25 years and in one day, in an instant, things changed. Stay in the feeling and the nature of joy. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Stop feeding fear, pain, and anxiety. Don't feed the beast, starve it. The next lesson here is that we have to let go of our attachment on how the plan is going to come about. How is God going to bless us? God wants to bless us greater than our physical attachment of what we seem to be a great, amazing place. God has a greater plan than your plan. And the lesson here, while Abraham's firstborn was not the child of the covenant, his release symbolizes the need to detach from what might seem to be valuable and familiar or even a cherished outcome, because your own plans are your own limited visions, but to fully embrace God's ultimate and often more expansive plan for our lives, we have to release the attachment of having to know how for the sake of aligning with divine timing. Letting go in faith does not equate to abandonment. So you cannot forget your actual necessary responsibilities. But it's, Abraham stepped out on faith without a plan, without a direction, without a how. And doing this really allows ourselves to spiritually open the door to new forms of divine support and unfolding in our life. Like, God wants to see our willingness. Like, after going through all this training, are we saying, put me back in, coach? Are we trying to manipulate and still to abuse the situation? Are we trying to get put back in because we have an attachment to maybe a player that's out there on the field? And we're really not trying to play the game for real. So we always have to make sure that we're questioning our intentions and leaving our ego at the door, as well as our material attachments. The last lesson, lesson number 12. Your surrender offers the promise. Trust, even when you don't fully understand. Don't scheme, don't try to control, don't try to bargain and manipulate. Keep your integrity and release the how. Ultimate trust offers back the promise itself. So, Abraham, he was willing to give Isaac, the promised son. It represents the very embodiment of all of Abraham's hopes, his future lineage, and the fulfillment of God's covenant that God made with Abraham himself. This was a command to sacrifice Isaac, signifying really the ultimate surrender of even of your most cherished attachments, even those that may even be divinely given. This isn't about a literal sacrifice, but it's about a willingness to release our grip on the outcomes, our expectations, and even the perceived means by which God's promises will even be fulfilled. True trust transcends the need to control or understand the divine plan by being willing to offer back the promise. His understanding of how God is going to work it out, it really opens himself up to the inner understanding and deeper provision. And Sarah in this situation, because during this situation, his divine feminine was quiet. Unlike in the Hagar situation, you know what I'm saying, where she was also with the shits trying to manipulate and scheme, and then she was hating on Hagar she was hating on what she actually contributed to. And this lesson in this and that, the Hagar mistake is letting you know that if your divine feminine is not in check, as well as your divine masculine, but your divine feminine in this example, then it can lead you to some shit, some crazy shit. And it can manifest in the physical as some crazy stuff. So he didn't allow his emotions to get in the way. So in this situation, this time with Isaac, she trusted, even though she didn't fully understand. She said, I don't care how I feel. That's my baby I was waiting for, that I actually birthed out of my womb. But you know what? Even that I trust, regardless of what I feel right now. And Abraham, he was obedient. He didn't bargain like he did in Sodom or scheme like he did with Pharaoh. The divine masculine and feminine were in harmony. They released the attachment of the how, and the feminine held space for mystery in the darkness of the soil. Maturity and divinity operates in surrender, not in control. So if you want to win the spiritual war, make sure you take note of these 12 lessons because, Abraham, although he was an actual character, in the words of my sister Danny, we got to eat the meat and leave the bone, baby. So make sure you got this meat. Until next time, y'all. Peace. Be well.